Hi, my name is Rodney Fowler, and I'm here to talk to you today about Intuit Practice Management and how we integrate with your desktop programs Lacerte and QuickBooks. Intuit Practice Management, as you likely know, is a cloud-based application. Basically, it's off the internet. So you might be wondering how we take data from your Lacerte and QuickBooks programs on your desktop and pull that into your cloud-based application, Intuit Practice Management. We do that through the use of two separate sync utilities. One is the Intuit Sync Manager, which has been inside the QuickBooks file since 2009. The other is a Lacerte Sync that we have specifically designed to interact with the Lacerte program and pull that data over into the cloud. Now, before we talk about setting up those sync utilities, let's take a segue for a moment and talk about how the Intuit Practice Management stores data on our network. Let's say that you have a client that walks into your office and they bring in data associated with accounting work or tax work. They're most likely bringing you sheets of paper and files. Now, you probably take those files and sheets of paper and you'll store them in a manila folder that you'll likely put inside some kind of file cabinet in your office. The computer utilizes the same analogy in storing its files. On your desktop applications, you basically do work in programs that are stored in files, whether it be Excel or Word or anything else. And then once it's stored in these documents, those documents are written into folders which are stored on your hard drive, basically the equivalent of the file cabinet in our analogy. The online applications do effectively the same thing. You have work that is being performed and data being written into a particular file on our servers. Those files are then stored into folders on our servers that we call realms, and they're stored in the cloud, basically on large servers or databases that we have in our system. What you need to find out is what realm your Intuit Practice Management program is associated with, and to do that we would go to the admin screen and access Desktop Sync Manager. Now, about halfway down the screen, you're going to see your firm's unique installation key. This is how the Intuit Practice Management refers to its realm ID that it stores data in and pulls data from to utilize the Intuit Practice Management program. What you'll see is a folder name or a realm ID stipulated as a long number. The names of our folders on our server are basically 9 to 10 digit numbers that are stored on your system. In this situation, the name of my realm is 493-828-280. Any data I want to pull into the Intuit Practice Management program has to basically be written into that location so that I can get to it and access it. Let's talk for a moment about how we would get your QuickBooks data up into the cloud. Now, before we begin, there's some things you should know about the QuickBooks Sync utility. First, your Sync utility should only be installed to one computer in the network. You're going to want to install it on a computer that is normally up and accessible throughout the majority of the year, and you're going to generally want to log into that computer as if you are an admin. Once you have identified the book that you want to sync with, in other words, the book that you track your own income and expenses for the company, go into that book as if you are the admin for that book. It's normally best, by the way, to be in single user mode for this purpose. Once you're in the book that you want to sync to the cloud, on the computer you want to use as your sync point, logged in as the user that you will normally be accessing the program from, go ahead and hit F2 to pull up a product information page. The product information page is going to show you lots of information on the particular book, the version that you're accessing it, where the file is stored. What we're specifically looking for is your company realm ID shown in the top right hand corner. Now, for many of you, it'll probably say null. If it says null, then that means that you are currently not syncing with any other applications inside Intuit, in which case you're fine. There's nothing that can happen to you that go bad. If your company realm ID has an ID number there, a 9-digit number, then what you're going to need to do is basically ask everyone if they're doing any type of syncing with any other applications. If they're not, then you're okay to proceed. If they are, then basically there's going to be a cause for concern. You'll probably want to complete the setup by giving us a call. I'm going to proceed on the assumption that we're currently not syncing with any other utilities, and or that you are syncing but really don't need to, in which case we're free to go ahead and go forward. I'm going to go ahead and close down the product information screen, and then I'm going to go up to the Help pull-down menu, come down to Manage Data Sync, and I'm going to go over to Clear Login and Sync Settings. If you don't have that option, it's okay to go ahead and do Help, Manage Data Sync, and Clear Sync Settings. I'm going to then have to type yes to confirm that I want to clear my sync settings, and press Enter. As you'll see, I'll get back a message saying the sync settings were successfully cleaned from the computer company file. You can sign up again with Intuit Online Services. I'm going to go ahead and say OK to that, and go to my File pull-down menu, and come down to Set Up Intuit Sync Manager. This is going to go through a loading utility, and when it finishes, it's going to ask me for my username and password. Generally, you'll want to log in at the same username and password that you use to log into the Intuit Practice Management program. In the bottom right-hand corner of the screen, you will see our icon that we use to designate the Intuit Sync Manager. That's going to be two little green arrows that chase themselves around in a circle. This utility will automatically load every time you turn on the computer and log in as the user that you're currently logged onto the computer as. It will run in the background. QuickBooks does not need to be open for it to do its job. But what it's going to do is it's going to grab the data from your QuickBooks file and write that up to the company realm that you specify in just a moment. Let's go back and log in. After logging in, it'll be some processing, and what's going to happen is your Intuit Sync Manager is going to go out and search our cloud-based environment for any previous files that you've created out there. In other words, any other realms, folder locations that you may have set up on our servers. If you've already logged into IPM, you'll want to choose Use an Existing Company. In other words, if you have not logged into IPM, you'll want to click on Create a New Company and sync your file. For the vast majority of you, you'll want to use Existing Company and click Next. Now, you might see several different things come up. These are going to be realms that you've already created to interact with other programs. For some of you, you'll only have one option. Here, I'm scrolling down. I'm going to select my Deckard Accounting. Notice that in my case, I have Intuit Practice Management associated with this particular realm. For many of you, you may not have anything else there. In other words, it won't say Intuit Practice Management, even though you've already signed up for it. That has to do with the architecture change that we did on our servers. In general, you'll want to look for a company that basically matches the name of your book, or that you may have already typed in as the name of your company when you signed up for IPM. If you see a number on your system, such as company ID 493-828-280, you'll want to make sure that that matches back to the Intuit Practice Management number that you have there. It is not necessary for them to totally match. In other words, if there's a discrepancy between those two numbers, it should be okay as long as you signed in with the same credentials that you signed into IPM. However, it's generally the preferred way to set up so that it does match to the Intuit Practice Management program. After you've specified a company name that you want to sync with, go ahead and click on Next. What you'll see is your data upload into the cloud. Give it one moment while that happens on your system. After the sync completes, you'll see a Sync Complete screen. Go ahead and shut that down. Now, let's go take a look at the Intuit Sync Manager utility again. Down on your taskbar, you should see two little green arrows chasing themselves around. This is the Intuit Sync Manager utility. Go ahead and right-click on that and go to Open Sync Manager. It's going to open up your screen in the following presentation. You'll want to go up to your Options pull-down menu and likely click on Show Details so that you can see the book that it's associated with. Additionally, you'll want to go back to your options and go back to Automatic Sync options and set your automatic sync for data every 5 minutes. By default, it goes to 1 hour. The 5 minutes is going to sharply reduce the amount of time that you have to wait for data to basically flow from QuickBooks up to IPM and from data to flow from IPM back down to QuickBooks. Unfortunately, because there is a middleman, namely the realm that your data is stored to, there's going to be a little bit longer than a 5-minute turn time on that. What we should expect is data to flow from QuickBooks to IPM every 7 to 9 minutes, and from data to flow from IPM down to QuickBooks every 7 to 9 minutes with the settings that we've discussed. Once you make that change, you should see the program resync in order to go through and make sure that it pushes the data every 5 minutes, and your timer should change to update every 5 minutes. Once that's taken place, go ahead and close it down. Now, if you experience any errors during that process, go ahead and give us a call. We'll see if we can't straighten it out. At this point in time, I've successfully synced my data from QuickBooks up into the realm where IPM is looking for its data. There's another tweak that we have to do in order to bring that information into the Intuit Practice Management. However, before we do that, I want to go over and talk about our Lacerte integration, specifically the sync from the Lacerte program up into Intuit Practice Management. To do that, I'm going to start off by going to my 13 tax program. And once I'm in my 13 tax program, I'm going to hit F10 to bring up a technical support information screen. Now, the technical support information screen just displays the data that is associated with the particular program that you're in. The key thing that we need to get from that particular screen is your data path's location. Here, you'll see that mine is located at C Lacerte 13 Tax iData. Once you've written down this path to make sure that we're matching back and pulling the data correctly, go ahead and shut down your product support information page. Now, the way the Lacerte Sync Manager utility works is we go back to your user options and pull data from your user options in order to use it to sync the data back to Intuit Practice Management. To facilitate that, your user options have to be set up. So what I generally suggest at this point in time is that you go through each module that you plan on syncing with and ensure that your user options are set up. To do that, you would just go to Client, Tax Type, and then jump to your Partnership screen. If your user options are not set up, you'll get something about setting up electronic filing or something of that nature. You could go ahead and take the time to set it up now if you wish, or if you'd rather, just go ahead and cancel past it as you'll have time to set it up later. When you come up to your Partnership screen, go ahead and again hit F10 to see your product information page, and then go down and retrieve your data path. After you retrieve the data path, close down that screen, and then continue to proceed through the rest of the modules, going to Corporate, S-Corp, Fiduciary, and then Exempt Organization. If you want, you're certainly welcome to go ahead and finish off Estate, Gift, and Benefit Plan. However, we only import from the Individual, Partnership, Corp, S-Corp, Fiduciary, and Exempt Organization programs. Once all the modules have had their user options established, go back to the Individual module. Then minimize your screen. What we're going to want to do is go back to the Intuit Practice Management program, and you're going to want to download Intuit's Desktop Sync Manager. Now, the different browsers handle this differently. Internet Explorer will download and then try to launch and run the utility. Google Chrome will download the utility in the bottom left-hand corner and then basically necessitate that you double-click on the executable in order to initiate it. Mozilla Firefox downloads a utility, and there will be a green down arrow that appears in the top right-hand corner, which you can click on, and then click on the utility to initiate it. Let's give it a moment for that to download. When the executable finishes downloading, you'll see it in the system or will auto launch. Here in Google Chrome, I'm going to have to launch it. I'll get the option to go ahead and install it. I'm going to go ahead and say yes, and it's going to prepare to run their setup. When it's complete, I'll have a basic installation program. I'm going to choose Next, Install, and then it's going to go through an installation. When it finishes, I'm going to have the ability to click on Finish to launch IPM Sync. And then my application will launch. Now in this situation, I'm going to assume that I want to sync with both Lacerte and QuickBooks. Obviously, you'll pick the options that are applicable to you. I'm going to go ahead and click on Next, and I should see my user ID and password in there. If not, go ahead and type it in. Again, this will want to be the exact same user ID and password that you've used to sign into Intuit Practice Management. Below that, I'm going to want to put in the information from my firm's unique installation key, which you and I know is the company realm ID. Go ahead and put that information in there, and you can do so by copying and pasting it in if needed. Once it's complete, click on Log In. It may take a moment to validate who you are, but when it's finished, you will have the Next button below it. After you click Next, you will have the options of choosing which program that you want to sync data from. Here, I'm going to choose both Lacerte and the QuickBooks files, and then click on Next. The program will take Lacerte first. It will go out and read your user options, and then it will display those user options in your screen here. Just verify that they're correct, and select Yes, these are the Lacerte data paths that I want to connect to IPM. Once you've done that, click on Next again. You'll notice that the program will fairly rapidly come back with another screen where there is another Next. What's happening at this time is we're taking the data out of the Lacerte program and we're writing it out to an area of your hard drive. In the background, it's already started to pull that data back up into the servers. But before we go there, we have to finish off our sync with our QuickBooks file. I'm going to go ahead and choose Next, and it's going to bring up a listing of all realms that are associated with my login. Here, you see Deckard Accounting is the only realm that actually has data in it. And towards that end, I'm going to want to assure that the company ID is the one that matches back to where my QuickBooks data is being written to in the servers. In this situation, my QuickBooks data is being written in the same place as my Lacerte data, which is the same place as my IPM program is looking for that data. Although that does not have to be the case. I'm going to go ahead and choose Next after that screen. And then I'm going to go ahead and close the program. At this time, what we have going on is the Lacerte data has already been written out to an area of a hard drive and is being pulled over to QuickBooks, and is being pulled over to IPM in small snippets. Additionally, the QuickBooks file is beginning to push its data up to the IPM folder or realm in which we see our data, and that data is steadily being brought into the Intuit Practice Management program. Let's go back and look a little bit more at that Lacerte sync to see how it works. Earlier, I recorded my data path as being C Lacerte 13 tax iData. To see how it works, I'm going to return to that path, going back out to my hard drive, going to C Lacerte 13 tax, and then jumping down to iData. In your data folder, for wherever it is currently accessing the module, you'll see a Lacerte sync directory. That Lacerte sync directory will hold all the information that we need in order to import into the cloud. If something goes wrong, it normally goes wrong somewhere around this directory, which means that if you ever need to do any troubleshooting, it's normally a good idea to go back and tweak a file by changing the client name or information, such as the address, and or create a new file and see if it writes information out in this area. What you should see is a file write out to this area. It will stay there for a few minutes. More files will come in, maybe one or several, depending on the amount of data that's in here, and then they will all leave together, just clearing out this file. If that's happening, normally this process is working smoothly and your data should flow on into the Intuit Practice Management program. I'm sure you have a lot of questions. If you do, please feel free to give our support a call. Otherwise, your data has now been synced up to the Intuit Practice Management program, and it's time to advance to setting it up so that it can interact with the QuickBooks module. Thank you for your time today, and I look forward to seeing you soon.